Yes. Hello. All of you people, both of you watching at home. It's great. Hey, I am Rob McCollum. That's all you have missed so far. But one thing I was going to do, just because some people come to these things and say, I don't know anybody, and I'm walking around alone. If you want to, when I point to you, yell your name, and other people can go, hey, and they're not going to remember your name, and that's fine. But they'll go, oh, I saw you at Rob's convention. How are you doing? If you don't want to, that is totally cool. But let's start back there. What's your name, if you want to?
Reese Wood, CPA.
Reese.
Yes, Reese.
Excellent. You, sir? My name is Juan. Juan. Excellent. You, sir? Mike. Mike. What's that? Travis? How about you in front? Reese Maisel. Reese? Two Reeses. I like it. How about you? Hope. I love it. You? Robbie. You? Chastity. She works here. Don't miss her out. In the back. You guys want to do it? No. No. All good. All good. Jenny. Megan. Josh. I know with masks it's almost important. Thank you for wearing masks. We appreciate it. Some people have taken it to the extreme. But I like it. So yeah, no official structure to this whole thing. There's a microphone right up there, but I can probably hear you if you want to yell questions. I will do a brief overview of the life and times of how Rob McCollum ended up here, and talk a little bit about anime, and then we'll talk about anything you guys want to. When I moved to Dallas, and it did all happen here in Dallas many moons ago, I got involved with the acting community here, started doing commercials, TV, and improv comedy. And I did improv comedy with a troupe that performed in the same place as another group called Section 8 that starred a young Mike McFarlane. Anybody know the name Mike McFarlane? Master Yoshi in Dragon Ball Z. Who went on to become one of the main directors at Funimation, when Funimation was brand new and had just come to North Texas. They basically had Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and they came to Texas and were like, we don't know what we're going to do about it, but we were told there were actors here. And they were just a distribution company. They were taking the videos and putting them out on DVDs. That was their whole world. And the dubs were kind of an afterthought. Like, oh, we need an extra feature on the DVD to have an English language track. Nobody watched the dubs. Everybody who was a true... First of all, anime was very new in the U.S. at that time, so the only people watching were true fans, and the diehard fans just listened to the subs, understandably. But they're like, okay, I guess we got to have a dub, because we got to sell the DVD to Best Buy or whoever. So they rented a little building upstairs of a bank in North Richland Hills, which is like 45 minutes from here. Not easy to get to no matter where you live, unless you live in North Richland Hills, and started cranking out dubs on a giant tape-to-tape machine. And the way that worked is they had the original tape, and you would do one line, and then it would spool back, and you would wait for spool back, and then they would play it with the English track, and then if it didn't work, they would spool back, and then you would record that line again, and then it would spool back. It took like 45 minutes to do 4 lines. And there was no such thing as a professional voice actor in North Texas. It was a thing people did when they got the call from somebody they knew. And it was zero money and zero residuals, but like, hey, come in and do this. And if you came in to do one, more than likely you would do 3 or 4. Because once they got to 2 rooms and then they got to 3 rooms, they'd just be like, hey, who's in the building? Oh, Rob's here? Yeah, send him down. And you do 2 lines on this show, and then you do a character on this show, and then all of a sudden you were a lead in this show that you'd never heard of and never knew it was a big deal or not. The idea that like we were vying for roles and hoping to get things was not even in the cards. It's also why you listen to the early stuff, and especially the early Dragon Ball stuff, you're like, wow, that seems like the same 20 voices doing all those roles. Yep it is. I have killed myself in several scenes. As Soldier 1 and Assailant B. It was not a high-tech thing, and I would love to say that we were all brought in based on our quality and talent of work, but we happened to be there, and we were the people that got called in. As you know, anime has taken a much different road from that original starting point. Funimation realized they had a thing, started buying up more products, and what basically did is they bought the distribution rights to any and everything they could buy. Didn't matter if it was popular in Japan, didn't matter if it had a following, just buy everything they could get a hold of the rights to distribute, and then throw it out there and see what sticks and see what might become a thing. Got a show called Case Closed. Case Closed ran forever. It made it to television. It made it to Cartoon Network, I believe. And that was another one that needed a different cast of weekly people dealing with the crimes. It was like you had the set crew that was dealing with it every time, but then a new villain, a new victim, a new everything. It was like Murder, She Wrote. So there was like a constant need for just actors, anyone with a voice and a pulse. Was coming in and cranking that out, but as they started to get more shows, started to build a profit model out of it, sold the company, bought it back, sold the company again over the years, but became kind of the predominant house and now are owned by Sony for distribution of Japanese anime projects. Crunchyroll and Funimation that were together for a while. It was weird, it was strange, it's back off now. Were the two big houses. There was one in Houston called ADV, and there was a couple in LA, and that was it. So Dallas slowly but surely became the voiceover hub for anime, and then when video games came on, a couple of companies came here for that reason and are doing work, and also started using the Dallas talent pool. LA started calling, people from Funimation started moving out, Travis Willingham and Laura, a lot of the Critical Role people, if you know any of the Critical Role, Dungeons and Dragons, blog, podcast, everything, they all came out of Funimation. And that was the launch pad for those folks. And I just stayed here and rode that ride. Continued to do commercials, continued to do voiceover and acting, and then just kept taking roles as they became available. And suddenly, 20 years later, I'm in Attack on Titan, and we're getting better cable numbers than The Daily Show for the season 2 release of Attack on Titan. So yeah, it was kind of an insane ride. I think my first character was in Case Closed. My first lead character was Teen Goten in Dragon Ball GT, the teenager that launched the ship and screwed everything up because he wanted to talk to a girl. Which was on brand at that point in my life, I'm not going to lie. And shows like Desert Punk, Baki the Grappler. These are all shows that nobody really remembers, but they were important to me. Baki the Grappler was my first title role. I was the titular character. I was Baki. This is going to be huge. My career is made. 7 people watched Baki the Grappler, and one of them is right back there. It is now being reborn and is having new life, which makes me very happy. But yeah, and so it was on the job training. You could not train to be a voiceover actor for dub work. You had to go do it, and you did it hours and hours and hours and hours poorly, and got slightly better. At least hopefully. Hopefully we all got a little bit better over time. But it was the most on the job training, and it made me realize that and a lot of people do how to be a VA actor, how to break into voiceover, they do panels like that. The number one thing that all you watching at home, the number one thing that I learned is that your voice is an instrument that can be trained. Your voice with a microphone is a completely different instrument and can be trained in a very different way. So if you have any aspirations, the first thing I say is go buy a cheap USB, Snowball, anything mic. Get a software, there's free ones, there's everything, but allows you to hear it in real time together, like you can hear yourself through the headphones, and realize that your voice sounds one way here and sounds another way here. And there are things you can do with it, and there are places you can go with it, and begin to play with that instrument. I think that is really useful, especially now that we spend so much time on Zoom and on phones, and your voice is digitally projected now as much as it is not, and people aren't used to hearing themselves. I recommend for anybody in any job, in any form of life, because you have to communicate, get on some earphones and listen to your voice through a device and figure out what that sounds like, because it's a very different sound than what you hear in your head. And you may hate it, In the beginning, I did, but then you get used to it and you begin to change it, or you begin to bring what the mic picks up more into line with how it sounds in your head by how you modulate and pitch control things. And it's just a question of time. It's like the 10,000 steps to master each, 10,000 times to master anything. It's the same exact thing. And it is important to be able to fail along the way. I failed along the way in the episodes of Funimation broadcast projects. Most of them are not available online, which is a blessing, those early ones. Some of them now, although they're starting to stream the whole catalog now with Funimation.com, so they're probably all out there somewhere, some of the embarrassing things. But I went on to some cool stuff, big shows. I got to be a playable character in Borderlands 2. I was Axton, the turret guy in Borderlands 2. I got to do Orcs Must Die video game series, do some other video games. I am one of the voices on a Bop It. Not the Bop It, but a Bop It derivative. That's the only, I've been doing this 25 years, that's the only thing either of my college-age kids or their friends care about. I'm like, oh, did you, anyone there is a Attack on Titan? No, but they know you're Bop It. Great. I'll go do the campus, like, family weekend, alumni weekend, or family weekend today on campus, and people goes, hey, it's Bop It guy. Twist it. Flick it. I'm like, great. That's great. And it's in Boston, so they're not subtle. They're not subtle people. Yeah, other than that, I produce a whole lot of corporate training videos. I write and produce them. If you have had to do IT security training, first of all, in your jobs, I apologize. Second of all, they may have been my fault. If they were attempting to be funny, they probably went through our company. Again, I apologize. And I've gotten to write and produce a lot of TV commercials and direct a lot of that kind of stuff now. So it's been a cool vehicle, but always this has been kind of the little engine that just keeps running in the background the whole time. And then every few years I get to go to a con and go, oh yeah, I forget, this is awesome, and people love this, and I'm excited to be a part of it. And then I go back down into my Badger cave and come back out. So it's exciting to be here. This is the first one I've done in about 3.5 years. That's what we were talking about before, and I haven't done many even prior to that. So, all right, that is Rob McCollum's life story in 17 uninteresting minutes. Hopefully 3 of them were interesting. Now is the point where we can talk about anything you want. This is called a Q&A, or as they say in the corporate world, an AMA, an Ask Me Anything. There's a microphone right there, or you can raise your hand and yell it, or if you don't have any questions, we'll snap some pictures and everyone can go get snacks and go to the dealer room. That is also fun. There's no pressure, but go to the dealer room, because there's some cool stuff there. Anybody got a question? Yes, sir.
Have you ever considered doing work on Audible or doing books?
I have done about 5 audiobooks, and I enjoy it, but it is not as exciting as I thought it was going to be, because it had been a goal of mine for years, because I love audiobooks and I listen to them all the time. And then I started realizing what a machine that process is, which is basically they're paying you per finished minute. There is no editor on site. There is no director on site usually. A couple of the larger titles I've done, they have that. But most of the time it is just you roll till you screw up, you stop, you back up the roll, and you keep going. So it's done in one continuous roll. You don't get the book ahead of time. You don't get to plan characters ahead of time. So if you ever wonder like why audiobook readers seem to read so slow and why everyone listens to it on 1.2 or 1.5 speed, it's because they've never seen these words in front of them before and don't know if this is a statement or a question until they get to the end of the sentence. So it's a very non-committal read. But it's cool, and it also, through that, got to work on a couple of narrative podcasts that were in the audiobook world, same company. Did a American history podcast called 1865, which was number 1 2 years ago, and then season 2 was number 1 last year. It's had about 5 million downloads at this point. So if you're at all a fan of audio drama and American history, that's about the Reconstruction after the assassination of Lincoln, and basically how the Reconstruction plans were destroyed, and every problem that we had in 1865 we still had in 1965. But that's what that's about. And then another audio drama that I wrote and produced called Terms, that is good political drama like House of Cards, but audio. But I do love the audiobooks, and the few that I have done for authors that I really respected, it was kind of exciting because then they would send an email and say, hey, I heard the thing, it sounded really good, thank you. There was one gentleman who was a psychiatrist who had written the story of his relationship with his Down syndrome daughter. And it was a first-person book, so I was playing him reading his words about the most important period of his entire life. So no pressure to land that and keep it. They're like, yeah, we just want it to be light and uplifting. I'm like, oh God, okay, yes. So that one freaked me out, but turned out really well, and he was really happy with it. I do love audiobooks, though. I find, especially over the pandemic, audiobooks were the thing. Like, even for a while, podcasts were like, I need more escapism than even a podcast. So I would go to audiobooks and do love them. I would love to get to do a really cool fantasy series, like a really good fantasy series. What's that? Yeah. If anyone's ever heard a book read by Bronson Pinchot, he's absolutely the most brilliant audiobook reader. He was Belky in Perfect Strangers however many years ago, but now has just been living off audiobooks, and he is a genius. So I recommend it highly. Any other questions? That was a great first question. Thank you, Reese. All right, thank you so much. No, I'm just kidding. Yes. Okay, in the back. Come on.
From all your work, which project was your favorite?
Which project was my favorite that I work with? This is a common question. There are different reasons that I love them. I love different ones of them for different reasons. Some of them are for the people I get to work with. Caitlin Glass is one of my favorite directors. When I get to work with her, that's always fun. Trini Nishimura is one of my really good friends, and so any project that we're on together and get any scenes that even overlap a bit is always fun. My first bad guy I ever got to do, and I really like to do bad guys now, was a show called Yu Yu Hakusho, Ghost Files, and Shinobu Sensei was the first bad, and I'd been like the young hero guy, like the 14, 15-year-old, striving like, we can do it, come on guys, let's go, like Teen Goten, and that's what everybody saw me as, and all the directors thought of me with that voice all the time, and they're like, oh yeah, this is Rob, that's what Rob does. And I kept being like, you know I sound different from that in life, right? You know I can do. And they were like, well, yeah, huh? But we know what you do, and we're going to keep casting you as that. And finally, Justin Cook, who is now the head producer, muckety muck, basically in charge of production at Funimation. Like, he's gone all the way from engineer to director to, high overlord. But he was the director of the Yu Yu Hakusho dub, and I lobbied, and finally he's like, okay, I'm going to let you read for a bad guy. And I came in, and I was like, turned the mic way up and got really close. I was like, I think he talks down here. I think this is what he sounds like. And he was like, yeah, okay, do that. And then got to do, that was one of my favorite characters and favorite process, also because I realized that bad guys do not have to exert themselves nearly as much as good guys. I don't know if you've noticed this, but like, good guys are always working and striking and powering up and kame-kame-haing or whatever. It's like, yeah! It's a lot of work. Bad guys are usually totally chill and barely exerting themselves until the last 30 seconds of their life. And then they freak out and scream, and then it's over. So like super powerful people go, ugh, and the wall falls. But the young hero goes, ah! And it's a lot. So always go for the more powerful character if you can. And bad guys are usually way more chill and also way lower in your register. So if you have stayed out too late, made poor life choices the night before, and are coming in really tired, you can still sound like this. And it's worth it. I don't know if this is coming through. I can't hear myself back. So that was my first bad guy, and I loved that one. And then Black Butler, which I wasn't in a ton, but got to be peripherally involved in because my friend Ian Sinclair directed that whole project, and it was written by another friend of mine, and so I loved that, and getting to be Vincent Van den Pive, the dad. So again, Dad Rob is part of the thing. Hetalia was the first thing that my kids ever cared about that I had done, so that was exciting. I'm Sweden in Hetalia, and that was fun just because that's one of the first ones that really peaked into broad pop culture recognition. So suddenly, like, Even my kids were like, oh yeah, no, we know Italia. Yeah, we like Italia. That was cool. We all knew Attack on Titan was going to be huge. So that was fun because it was like everybody was kind of waiting. Like, what are we going to, who's going to get a shot? Who's going to get a character? Who's going to get a part? Didn't even know about it because a lot of them were like, don't read ahead. Don't read the manga. We want you to not know. So they were adamant about my character. Is everyone here? Is anyone going to be watching Attack on Titan that hasn't started it yet? If they're going to be offended by spoilers, tell me now. Nobody cares. Okay, great. So my character has a big secret, and they were intent on me not knowing that the entire time I was recording the season. Literally found out, and they were like, don't read. And I was very surprised because Reiner is a very small character in the initial episodes. And I was like, oh, you got Reiner, that's awesome. And I'm like, is it? Why? And they're like, oh, I'm not going to tell you. I'm like, but what? They're like, no, I'm not going to tell you. And then I was getting like requests for interviews from Los Angeles before the show released, but we hadn't recorded all the way through it. I'm like, why am I getting asked? I'm like a 4-line background guy that's a part of the squad. What's happening here? Finally, and so I kind of suspected it was coming, but when I finally found out, oh, okay. I just dropped the microphone. I'll talk loud. It's still working, but no, her microphone today. So that was fun because that was fun that got to evolve over time. Like I got to experience it as I was going, and then My Hero Academia, which we knew was going to be a monster success, but I had no idea that Stain was going to. Stain is barely in that show. I don't know what his total line count is, but it is really small, and yet people love that character. People talk about that character. There have been massive panels and discussions about how Stain is a turning point in the mood of the whole show. There's like pre-Stain and after Stain. It's a different show. So I felt super lucky, and that was fun to get to be a part of as well. So those are some of the favorites. Other one is Psycho-Pass. If anyone's seen Psycho-Pass, it's one of my favorites. Of all the people say, what would you watch if you weren't involved in it in any way? That's one that I would have watched from start to finish, whether I was in any way involved in it or not, because that is my jam. Yes, sir.
All right, I got a follow-up question on your later assignment. Would that have changed your performance had you known?
Probably, and that's why they didn't tell me. There's a couple of directors that are really big about that. Chris Bevins is really big about not wanting you to know much ahead of time, and Mike McFarlane is another one that is like, we'll lead you there, because he doesn't want you to play villain. He doesn't want you to lean into bad guys or even just put a little eyebrow raise. You can actually put an eyebrow raise on your voice. It's possible. Like you can, if you know where something's going too far in advance, you can tip the audience off without even meaning to. And either by trying too hard to play against it, so you make them a simpering wimp, or trying too hard to be like, I got a secret. So I think it would have affected my performance, so I was really glad that I didn't know until the time. And then didn't know how complex a character he was going to end up being by the time we got into later seasons. So yeah, Chris Bevins was one of the first ones that was like, I don't want you to know. There was a show or a mini-series, I'm not sure if it was a full season or not, but it's a simple called Blood Sea, where it turns out in the very end that one of the characters who seemed like the nicest, sweetest person is the murderous, villainous, awfulest mastermind, drinking people's blood and using it to control them and that sort of thing. And there's no way that they could have not leaned into that if they'd known ahead of time. Like, they had to literally be, like, the best friend next door all the way until episode 10 when the reveal happened, or you would have heard it. You would have seen it coming, and only because the actor didn't know, and that's the director's choice and the director's job, only because of that did I think the surprise work to maintain. So I think it's useful. Other questions? Yes, sir.
What was your favorite episode of any show you've done that makes you think, wow?
Favorite episode of any show I've ever done. There's a show called Sands of Destruction. I play a bear that looks very much like a teddy bear. And his race is Kuma. And out of respect to his race, he says the word Kuma at the end of every line. So in normal conversation, Kuma, it would be that this is the way I talk, Kuma, because I am respectful of my race, Kuma, because I am a Kuma, Kuma. And there's this huge battle. It's like cute fuzzy teddy bear with one eye patch versus the black version of the evil teddy bear, and they have this huge fight, and then he fights in the sky and all the normal great anime tropes, and he comes flying down through and lands on the ground and is like, Kuma. And that's probably my favorite episode of anything that I have gotten to do. Also, there's been some fun stuff with Black Clover, if there are any Black Clover fans. I played Julius, the Wizard King, and in the very first episode, he is disguised himself as an old lady snake salesman, and they're like, we're probably going to get an actual old lady to do this, but let's just hear. And so I was up here selling snakes, and they let me do it, and they kept it in the episode, and that was really fun too. And I think she even comes back another time. There's a second snake lady or eel. I think it's eels. I don't remember. Somebody knows. Somebody's going to be really mad at me that's watching this, and we're like, duh, it's obviously this. I'm sorry. It's been a long time. But yeah, that was another favorite. All right, other questions. Anything else? It doesn't have to be about me. It can be about anime. It can be about world geography, which I know nothing about, but I will lie and make it up and make it sound really convincing. Yes, sir.
All right, so you said you listen to audiobooks. Which ones do you like to listen to? Do you have a favorite narrator?
Bronson Pinchot is my favorite narrator, and probably, all right, both versions of Harry Potter are probably the highest level of audiobook execution you'll ever find, both the Jim Dale and the Stephen Fry. But Bronson Pinchot Hard Magic is a series. I like magic, and then I also really like magic in the real world, like present day. And there's a series that I just finished called The Rivers of London. Brilliant reader. The guy who reads it just won an Olivier for his work in Othello at the National Theater, but also does a ton of audiobooks. And it's about the secret magic investigation division of the London Metropolitan Police, like the X-Files side of the police. But it's just great. It's just a good reader makes a huge difference. So if you like that kind of stuff, if you're into fantasy or fantasy detective, I guess is its crossover genre. They're real good. What about you? Do you have a favorite? Are you an audiobook fan?
Oh yeah, I am. Yeah, I love The First Law by Joe Abercrombie, narrated by Stephen Pacey.
Okay, Stephen Pacey's a very good reader. Yeah, there's a lot of things by him.
I wish he did more stuff.
God, there was another guy that's. I'll blank on his name. I'll think of it in a minute. There's another reader that I really like. Anybody else an audiobook fan out there? No, not so much. It's okay. We're here for anime. Let's stay focused. All right, I'll stay on it. Any other questions? Yes.
Since you mentioned about you're just trying to get into anime, have you or your family ever done a cosplay collaboration or anything fun like that?
We haven't much. They did get to come in and sing as singing frogs on an episode of Sergeant Frog when they were little. That was very exciting to them. Have done, Lily, my youngest, my daughter has done a few bit voices over the years when they wanted actual kids. Now they're pretty much forbidden from doing that, which is with laws of regulations of child labor and that sort of thing. But back in the wild old days, you just like, bring your kid in here and have him say this line. So we've done that. But they also try to stay a little chill about it, because if it looks like they're flexing in any way, it can be really annoying to the friend. You know what I mean? Like, they don't mention it, they don't bring it up, and if other of their friends say, is that your dad I looked up? And they're like, yeah, whatever, it's cool, you know. They can't act like they think it's cool, or else it's trying way too hard. My ex-wife has no interest in watching or taking part of it. I don't know that they've seen very much at all. It's part of the aloof teenager distance that you have to have. One of my kids was mortified because in their dorm room someone was playing Borderlands 2, and they were using my character, And she just turned and was like, is that my, oh God, and just left, just left. Just left. Any other questions? Oh, we're doing good. You got plenty of time. Yes.
What's your favorite manga?
Say that again.
What's your favorite manga?
Favorite manga? Well, okay, this doesn't count as manga. This counts as graphic novel, but I'm a huge Sandman fan, and anything Neil Gaiman writes or has drawn for, has written for, I am a fan of. In terms of favorite manga, I like Assassination Classroom. That was one of the first ones I started in. I like One Punch Man, which is the show that I would always have dreamed to be in, and Funimation didn't get the contract on that. It was like a huge bidding war, and they didn't get it. I was like, oh man. That's the one that got away. Like, oh. What about you?
Right now I like Shield Hero. That's what I'm reading up on.
Shield Hero. That's fair. No pressure. No pressure. Yes.
So you said you're a fan of Sandman. Did you listen to the Audible production of that?
I did and did not love it.
Oh, what didn't you like about it?
It felt like they didn't have a good director. It felt like they didn't have a subtle director. It felt really like every choice was played to its obvious, I'm going to sound evil, or whatever. It lacks subtlety, and I think the writing actually has some subtlety to it, and it felt like it was and it also just felt like to me they got someone like, well, I guess these are the lines, we'll just read the lines. I'm like, no, you can get a director who has some sense of the stage play of the thing that you're trying to make. It also got better. It started really slow, but I was like, oh, I can hear them acting. I can hear everybody acting within an inch of their lives, and they're all competent actors. They don't have to try so hard, but everyone just felt like they were trying. But I love the source material, so I still listen to it. I still listen to it. Anything else? Yes, keep going.
From Sandman, what character would you play if you could play any character?
That's a really good question. Well, I mean, Sandman Orpheus would be pretty freaking cool, because he doesn't have to strain himself. He's down here and in control a lot of the time. He wouldn't, but again, he wouldn't be like go all the way to Stain. Like he's not going to be that. There's a lot of tongue acting in Stain. There's a lot of sticking your tongue out and trying to talk around a tongue that's sticking out. I also have the weird distinction, and I haven't tracked it, but I think I have the most Funimation characters that always have something in their mouth, like a pipe or a twig from Soul Eater, Mifune from Soul Eater, the pipe from Seven Samurai, so I have a whole series of people that either have a cigarette or an unlit cigarette, a lit cigarette, a toothpick, a match, a string of straw. If they have something in their mouth, I get the call. And also if they, for some reason, have one eye. I do a lot of eye patch characters. Was it Romeo and Juliet, Romeo X Juliet? I've just had a lot of one-eyed characters, and I don't know what that is about. So maybe that's what my voice sounds like. Maybe I just sound one-eyed in some way, and that's okay. I'm all right with that. Anything else? Any other questions?
So since you,
Go for it.
Of all the characters you've voiced, is there anyone you think you're similar to personality-wise?
Anyone I think I'm similar to personality-wise? This is a very deep question that you're asking. It will be very revealing. There was a very crusty detective in, what's it called? It's about two teenagers who are threatening a terrorist attack. Terror in Resonance, and the crusty, again, half cigarette in his mouth all the time, old police sergeant. Also Kogami from Psychopaths. Not that I have those kind of powers or anything like that, or his abilities, but I think I would react in a similar way to a police state situation, and I thought that was first of all, that show just goes kind of very deep into the actual personalities of the people involved. So I would think Kogami would be one that I could say I relate to just because I've had the most time with. Hopefully not Stain. I mean, he's got a good heart, but he's misplaced his actions, so hopefully not that. Yes, sir.
Another question. So you mentioned that in the early days it was like whoever showed up got the role. Was there a moment you knew this is what I want to do?
Well, it was never a thing you could do as a standalone job. It was always a thing you could do for an extra $50 a week or something. You know, it was only years later that there are people who make their living as a voiceover actor and a dub actor. And most of the time you can't do that even from what it pays to do the sessions. That is still not a lucrative thing. The fact that there are now giant anime conventions all over the country and you can go and do appearances and sell autographs is the way you could make a living as a voiceover actor. But because it is not original content, like the original content voice actors, if you're doing things in LA, if you're doing new cartoons, it pays the normal thing as a normal acting job, but the dub rate is very small because it is the after add-on thing. It's not considered original content. So it's not something that you could ever say, I'm going to do this for a living. It's going to be, I'm going to do that along with the 12 other things I do to make a living as an artist. And that's part of the thing, is like people are like, oh, you should make a living off of your art. I'm like, well, that's possible. But first of all, you're going to do 12 to 50 different jobs to make that work. And second of all, it may not be the thing you enjoy anymore because it's now your job that you're forcing to pay. If you're a great painter and suddenly you have to paint 12 pictures a day and sell them on the streets in front of, you know, Times Square to make your living, maybe you don't love painting anymore. So I do tell artists, like, yeah, you can do that as a living, or you can get a job that you can walk away from at 5 o'clock every day and do whatever you want at night or on the weekends, and that may help your art and protect it. But it's always been something that I wanted to continue to do. I knew it was going to be one piece of the puzzle all the way through, if at all they let me. And luckily, there's a lot of old dudes in anime, so as long as I just get older and gravelier and there keep being work, you know. I went from being like the young lieutenant to the old captain on the spaceship, and it still worked. Battleship Yanyimoto. Yes, ma'am?
What was your most challenging
Most challenging
role?
role? There's a great series about a calligrapher, Honda-kun and Honda, and what's it actually called? Barakamon, thank you. Honda-kun was the spin-off where you saw him in high school. But Barakamon is a sweet, funny story, but actually really has some emotionally intense things. Like, he's going through a lot, and there's like crying and breaking down, and I realized the error of my ways kind of things. And those were really, you know, really intense, only because you're coming in and you're in a booth and you had 2 minutes to prepare and you hadn't seen it happening. It's like, okay, now you need to have a full emotional breakdown. Those are challenges, but also the directors kind of know those are coming and will cast actors that they believe can actually do that, you know. And there are people that are better technicians than actors. There are great actors that are not good technicians, meaning matching the flaps, getting the timing right, all that. There are people that are great technicians and aren't great actors. I feel like I'm not great at either, but about in the middle on both, so that's why I've been able to keep right on working. What was the big crying scene? There was a huge crying scene. Well, there was a Reiner that was in the most recent tranche that I think is all out. Is a pretty emotional Reiner scene that was tough and interesting to get to. But yeah, those are challenging. And then also, for a little while, Funimation was dabbling in some of the racier things. They don't do that anymore, but for a while they were doing some of the naughty stuff and voicing a scene, even if you're not recording at the same time because you're by yourself, but when you hear a good friend of yours that's doing the other side of the sex scene, is really uncomfortable. Because you're like either hearing them do it and hearing that, or realizing they're going to be hearing you doing your half when they record, both of which are super awkward. Super awkward. Yeah, so that's challenging for a whole different reason. Anybody else? Questions? Yes.
I feel like this is a question that's asked a lot. What was your favorite episode of Attack on Titan that you got to know?
I think the reveal when he told everybody that he was the Titan. When they're on top of the wall with Bertolt, and he just says it real matter of fact, and he's like, come on, let's go. Like, nothing is happening. Because A, you're realizing he's having a full mental break at that point. Like, that's the first time you realize, like, oh, he's literally cognitive dissonance. He has separated himself from this action. But also, it's such a, like, I knew, like, I'm waiting for the big reveal. And again, I didn't read the manga ahead of time, and evidently that's pretty true to exactly how it went. But, like, it's going to be this huge moment, this big thing, like, I am the... No, he just, like, oh yeah, that was us. Anyway, we should go. And it's that fast and it was such a non-moment, and I read it and I was like, wait, it's really weird, right? And they're like, yeah, that's it. That's the whole thing. Same with the final Stain. Like the big moment with Stain, and then he stops. I thought the video had glitched in the studio. I'm like, okay, he just stopped. Thank you, Chen. He just stopped. Is that... and they're like, no, that's the way it's supposed to be. It's like, okay, cool. And then I'm like, so waiting for us, because we got finished kind of early. There's like 20 minutes left in the session. And they're like, yeah, you're good. And I was like, well, we're done for the day. And they're like, I think you're kind of done for the series, dude. I was like, what? What? He doesn't say anything. Is he dead? No. They're just carting him off to you know, the insane asylum prison, which I do know from the manga, Stain is seen in a frame when they're walking, All Might's walking past with someone else, and he's just in one of the cells, so he's still alive! So I am hoping for a whole Silence of the Lambs type thing where they have to come to him because they need his help to stop somebody, and he'll be like, okay, well, I guess you're worthy now. That's my hope. I just wanted to come back so bad. He'd come back, good guy, bad guy, don't care. I feel like at this point now he would have to come back as a good guy now, right? He would be reformed. He would realize that somebody was worthy enough, and would come back and say, all right, I'll help you save the world. Fingers crossed. If Japan, if you're listening, if you're about to write the next episode of the manga, just know I am here for it. I am Rob McCollum, and I am here for it. There we go. All right. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. There's autograph sessions signed up, and also I'll be in the dealer room. Everybody gets anything you want signed. If you want badges signed or whatever, it's totally cool. You don't have to buy crap, but there is stuff to buy. I've got some original prints. I've got a Stain print and a Reiner print ready to go, and a poster. So come by and see me. Thank you guys so much.